Hello, good evening, and welcome to another Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential. Still the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. And that's all because of you guys. Thank you so much. I see so many people in the chat already. Alicia K. Mayo, Pammy, and Donna, and Tammy. Thank you guys so much for being here and spending some time with us on another Wednesday. And it's going to be a fun one because we've got first of all, a special guest who's going to be joining us hopefully in a little bit. But we've got some cases you've heard about and some cases perhaps you haven't heard about. And the case that you haven't heard about is something that I think is just categorize it of I cannot believe this stuff still happens. So I'm looking forward to getting into that one. So let's talk a little bit about the game plan for this evening. First of all, joining us perhaps in the next 20 minutes or so is going to be Joel Waldman from Surviving the Survivor. Joel, all you guys know Joel. He's fantastic. He's a friend of mine. He's a fabulous guy. But what Joel is, to his core, is a reporter, and he has been following the Luigi Mangione case. This is the killing of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. He's been following that case very closely. And we were going to talk about it tonight anyways, but I thought who better to have on but Joel to really walk us through all of the details. He's been going live on this case nearly every single day since it happened, tracking where this individual was before they even knew who it was. Now that they've made an arrest, the story, if it wasn't crazy to begin with, this idea of a person brazenly being shot on a New York busy street with a guy with a silencer, and then they couldn't find him. Now that they have found him, it somehow has become even crazier. It's a mind-blowing case, lot to dig into. And I thought, would you rather hear it from me? Or would you rather hear it from someone who's really been following it? So as soon as I see his lovely face pop up, we will add him to the stream and we can chat with him about the Luigi Mangione case. It's fabulous. First of all, when I say fabulous, I don't in any way mean to minimize or trivialize the idea that somebody was killed and lost their lives. What I mean is when you follow these types of things, sometimes you have to step back and appreciate the absurd. And in a case like that, like this, it certainly exists. You've got so much just bizarre intrigue with, like I said, the silencer being used, the backpack being recovered with Monopoly money in it, the words being inscribed on the bullet casings. And then of course, we wouldn't have an arrest of a suspect who wouldn't have a fabulous name like Luigi Mangione. So that is to come. In the meantime, we're going to do a poll to talk about, if we have time left, the cases that we want to get into. We'll pop up that poll right now. The other two cases that are making a lot of news is Jay-Z, may have heard of him, has a buddy named P. Diddy in a little bit of hot water. And I have an interesting, I think it's interesting, take on this case, because a lot of people are asking me, Josh, could this ever go criminal? And I think not only is the answer yes, but the reason why might be very crazy. And I could be completely wrong. And I don't like to get, into the world of conspiracy theory, but I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think that it's probably been identified for us how this case could actually be filed as a criminal case if that ever does happen. So Jay-Z, and then the other one is James Craig. This is the dentist out of Colorado who cannot help himself and continues to make things worse for himself again and again and again. And he's done something even crazier, and that is he's now tried to have a hit put out, a contract kill, on the lead investigator in the murder case of his wife. So those are the two, Jay-Z and James Craig. If you want to hear more about either one of those, we'll put up a poll and we'll check in on that later. But first, we are going to get into the case of Ryan Borgwardt. That's a wonderful name as well. This is a gentleman who faked his own death out of Wisconsin. And we'll talk a little bit about the links that he went to do that, how he is now returned to the States of his own volition, and he's looking at criminal charges. There was a press conference about it today. And my biggest question is, what crime did he commit? We all think it's wrong, but what crime did he actually commit? So we'll talk a little bit about that case first while we're waiting for Joel to hop on. In the meantime, please, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to it. Thank you, everybody, for joining the chat and making this Wednesday night such a fun part of my week. Thank you again to everybody who left gifts from last week. That was Kelly Sandiford and Annalie Finch. If I didn't get to thank you for the super stickers and all that fun stuff, thank you again. We had a bunch of new members. I'm going to thank some of you now and some of you later, so we don't all have to sit through my announcements. But attorney Melanie Little, thank you so much. She joined up as a member. Danny May Adventures, Becky Ireland, Madeline PT, DPT, Minnie, Jared Jurr, Jerry D, Cookie Doodle, love these names, Joel D, and Buttercup 203. You guys are all fantabulous. Thank you so much for becoming members. If you thinking about membership, check out the YouTube channel because we talk about all the benefits of being a member. Pokemom has now been a member for 2 months. You are fabulous. Yeah, check it out, guys. We really are putting in a lot of work. Tiffany and Kaylin especially into making sure that the membership program isn't just in name alone, but that it is actually has some really fun benefits that I think you guys would enjoy. Okay. Ryan Borgwardt. That's how I'm pronouncing his name, and that's how I'm going to stick to it. This is a gentleman who he is a Wisconsin man who faked his own death and left his wife and 3 children for a woman, so they believe at this point, a woman living in Uzbekistan. And I have a wife and 3 children, and so I thought this story kind of resonates with me. What in the world could have driven this man to fake his own death? Well, he didn't just... This wasn't just he disappeared off the map. This wasn't just, an amateur's attempt at faking his own death. Ryan put in some work, okay? Ryan, first of all, traveled from his home in Wisconsin to this lake. The lake is called, I should have had that right here, Green Lake. The reason he chose this lake was it's the deepest in Wisconsin. So he's already done his research about where would be best to fake my demise. He traveled 50 miles to this lake. It wasn't just down the road. With him, he brought a kayak, fishing gear, an inflatable raft, and an electric bike. Why all those things, you ask? Well, here's what Ryan did. He took the inflatable raft along with him on the kayak so that he could paddle out into the middle of the lake. I mean, this is just incredible to think about the attention to detail he put into this. He didn't just take the kayak and push it out from shore and say, well, that'll wash up somebody somewhere and somebody will believe that I perhaps fell off. He got on the kayak, paddled it out into the middle of the lake, dumps his phone into the lake, overturns the kayak, gets on the inflatable raft, paddles his little self back to shore, gets on the e-bike, and travels another 70 miles. CJ says he's a weirdo. He is, but he's a weirdo with determination. He's a weirdo who is not going to be stopped easily. Travels 70 miles through the night to get to Madison, Wisconsin. In Madison, he gets on a bus to Detroit. In Detroit, he gets on a bus to Canada. In Canada, he gets on a plane to likely Uzbekistan. This is just amazing to me. Again, this isn't just a guy who took off one day and figures everyone will, think something awful happened to him. This isn't even just kind of pushing your car off a cliff. The amount of planning and, hiding his trail and the e-bike 70 miles through the night is the part that gets me too. That could not have been a comfortable trip. 70 miles on an e-bike through the middle of the night to just get a bus, to get another bus, to get a plane, to go to Uzbekistan. And the reason that it has been given up until this point is simply he was having personal problems. Okay. So now he's gone and months go by and they are investigating this as if he did drown. They are searching that lake. Keep in mind, he picked the deepest lake he could find, probably knowing that that would buy him some more time. Well, where he made some mistakes, and this is what cracks me up, is that in spite of all of this planning, he still had to have some money to live off of. So he transfers money, a large amount of money, to a foreign bank account shortly before this all takes place. Then they are able to find out, this is, by the way, not just local Wisconsin law enforcement, the FBI, everybody got involved in this whole thing. And they find out that he's been communicating with this woman in Uzbekistan. And they found out that he took out a $375,000 life insurance policy on himself in January, shortly before he went missing. Now, that you could say it doesn't, he's not the beneficiary of the policy. So it could have been in his last attempt at trying to care for his wife and 3 kids, he thought he would at least leave them the life insurance policy. But somehow law enforcement is able to track him down. And I believe the way that they did that, according to the reports that I've seen, is that they were able to figure out who this woman was in Uzbekistan. And they contact her and they say, hey, do you know a guy named Ryan Borgwardt? And she says yes, in a thick Uzbeki accent. And they go, can you put him on the phone? And she says yes. So now law enforcement gets in touch with poor Ryan. And he does do this kind of video where he lets everybody know that he's alive and safe. But months have gone by. And they're not going to extradite him. I mean, why is the federal government going to get involved in extraditing this man? If there is even a crime committed here, and that's the part I'm going to be getting to, is it enough for the federal government to get involved with the government of Uzbekistan and have this man extradited over this? I doubt it. So they just simply start talking to him, and he says himself that they kind of pulled on his heartstrings, and it was just a, dude, you got to do the right thing. You can't leave your wife and kids here. You've got a bunch of people who care about you. Whatever problems you have are not something that can't be solved. I'm making this all up, obviously. But they convinced this man to voluntarily get on a plane, fly back to Wisconsin. As soon as he arrives, they lock him up, place some handcuffs on him, and they had a press conference today. And I was going to show you guys the press conference, but I'll be honest with you. It was one of those press conferences that was for the sake of a press conference, but didn't really give us much information. It was kind of a lot of backslapping and applause for themselves for the job well done in tracking this man down, but didn't give us a whole bunch of information because everybody kind of is arriving at the same question that all of you are arriving at. And that is, what is he going to be charged with? Well, they didn't give us an answer because it was law enforcement that gave the press conference, and law enforcement basically just said, well, we're going to refer that to the prosecutors. And the prosecutors have said, we're looking into things, and there's been a recommendation of a charge of obstruction. Okay. So this is my question for all of you, and why I was also interested in this case beyond the craziness that we just discussed. But obstruction is interesting. We've seen obstruction before. Remember, there was this young woman, and I'm blanking on her name, who faked that she had been kidnapped. She reported a crime. Everyone went looking for her. And then she showed up a day or so later, and it was this whole big mess. And she got charged. She got charged with false police report, right? He didn't file anything here. He didn't call the police and say, hey, I've been kidnapped. That would be one thing. That would be, now you've invited the police to expend resources, and you've lied to them, okay? He didn't lie to anybody. If you think about it strictly, he just merely laid out the breadcrumbs to naturally draw the conclusion that he has disappeared into the lake. Now, you could make the argument that no reasonable person would take those types of steps, not realizing that resources would be spent in trying to look for that person. But again, I go back to the question of, is that a crime? And I'm not sure. Now, is the obstruction the covering up of the disappearance? So you plant evidence that you've perhaps are in peril, right? You create a situation which you know might cause a police response, and then you obstruct justice by concealing your own escape from that. Pammy, we love you too. Thank you so much. I guess, is that the obstruction? The taking the e-bike and the fleeing to Canada and the fleeing to Uzbekistan? Again, I'm a little bit at a loss here. And then I arrived at this idea, and I don't know if the prosecutors are going to do this, or if they should do this, or if that's ultimately where they will land. But where he may have actually committed a crime was in the taking out of the life insurance policy. And when you think about that, he did that in close proximity to the time that he was going to fake his own death, then there's an argument to be made that he bought that fraudulently with the idea, knowing that he was going to fake his own death, and that someone, maybe not himself, but his own family, would profit from that. That might be something. Insurance fraud, or attempt at insurance fraud, could be something. But had he already had that insurance policy in place for some time, I think it makes that argument weaker. And had he never taken out that insurance policy, again, I kind of arrive at that same conclusion of what exactly are we talking about here? What exactly did poor Ryan do? And do we live in a country where you can't even fake your own death anymore? This is America after all, isn't it? You would think that we are constitutionally entitled to fake our own death at this point. But I don't know. Do you guys have some questions on this thing? It's one of those cases where, I try to every once in a while find something that I think is just kind of interesting and borderline comical for the sake of talking about it, and maybe it doesn't have all that much legal intrigue. But if you guys have got questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, DK says, the Diddy might make a claim on the life insurance. If not, there are no damages. That's a great point, and that's why I would say it's what we call an inchoate crime, a incomplete crime, an attempted crime. You're right. I mean, to complete the life insurance fraud, somebody would have to make a claim against the life insurance. But I suppose the argument the prosecutors could make is that, listen, you took it out, you made them the beneficiary, then you attempted to fake your own death, which would pay out on the insurance, and somebody's going to eventually try to collect on that. I mean, there is an argument to be made there. I'm just wondering, do we even get that far, or are we really dealing with somebody who's just got a lot of problems and needs to kind of get his life together? I guess where I also land on this whole thing is that it's amazing to me that somebody can be so distraught that they feel like they have to escape their life and move in with somebody in Uzbekistan, and they will go through these great lengths to actually get there. Rachel says, can he possibly be charged with the cost of the search efforts? I think that's what they're trying to go after ultimately anyways. I think whatever he gets charged with, they're going to try to tack on as restitution the cost of the investigation, because that's, I think, what mainly the investigators are most offended with, right? You had us with divers out in that lake. You had us searching for you. You had us, using resources. And that, putting aside the comedy of this whole thing, that does kind of bother me a little bit too, because if you were pulling off law enforcement folks from doing their job to otherwise protect and help people, and you're doing that, you're causing trouble here with this poor man's, troubles, wasting all those resources. I could see that being something that law enforcement might get upset over. STS says, STS coming in hot. So we're going to get into that case soon. I'll take a couple more questions on this Mr. Borgwardt thing if we have them, but just gotta blow your mind, right? When you think about, because it had to have been planned as well, right? This doesn't appear to have been a spur of the moment thing. It's not a crime to fake your own death. I don't think it is a crime. I mean, I could be wrong. If you guys can find the statute or the case law for me that says it is, I don't think it's a crime unless you're somehow trying to profit off of that or escape prosecution or run from a problem or something else. But if you just decide out of nowhere, I'm done with all of this, and I've decided that I need to go to Uzbekistan and start all over. We live in America, and I think you should be able to do that. But we got more important things to talk about, because we have the host of the best guests on YouTube, Surviving the Survivor, Joel Waldman, also probably one of the hardest working and most exhausted men on YouTube, who's also been contemplating how to fake his own demise and escape to Uzbekistan. Joel, how are you doing?
Feeling like I want to be in Uzbekistan for a number of reasons. So that was perfect timing.
Would you go through all that work? Would you drive on an e-bike 70 miles through the middle of the night just to catch a bus?
I don't know. At this point, I do a lot to escape. But yeah, I don't know. We made this commitment to cover breaking news, and we're basically CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all in one with about 4 people. So it's a lot, but I'm enjoying it. It's just been a crazy week of news. There's these 3 brothers arrested in Miami today, very much like the Diddy case, accused of essaying women and drugging women, and come from extreme privilege. And I think it's gonna blow up in the media. But also we got this guy Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of nuts. That is a story that's
that is why I wanted to talk to you, because I know that you were one of the people who started following it from the jump, from when Brian Thompson was assassinated in the middle of a New York street by a man with a silencer, and the case went from incredibly bizarre and intriguing and just got more bizarre and intriguing as it unfolded, with the bullet casings having those words delay, deny, depose written on them, to the recovery of the backpack with the monopoly money, to now we've got this bushy eyebrowed gentleman being spotted all over New York, and finally now they arrest him, and he's got this manifesto, and he's still carrying a weapon on him. So tell us, with that bit of a setup, tell us, where do things stand now with this man?
Yeah, well, so detectives refer to this as a career case, but in journalism, this is maybe the story of a lifetime for some reporters. I mean, this got all the elements. You've got a kid from extreme privilege from the Baltimore area, went to a $40,000 a year private school. He's handsome. He's got the ripped abs. People are calling him the hot assassin. He goes, like you said, into Midtown Manhattan, which is the crossroads of the world, literally, with Times Square, not far from there, in the middle of a public street, takes out this weapon, which we've since found out was made with a 3D printer with a silencer, otherwise known as a suppressor. And he guns down this CEO of United Healthcare, the largest private insurer in the country, and he shoots him in the back.
Yeah. Can I ask you really quick? So from what you're saying, do they believe that the weapon that they see in the surveillance is the same weapon that they've recovered off of him now? I mean, it sounds like all the descriptions are right, but has anybody actually said that?
I don't know if they've overtly said it, but yeah, they do believe it is the same weapon. Everything points to it being the same. They did mention that it was made with a 3D printer, which I believe he knew how to do, because not everyone would know how to do that. The short answer to that is I'm not 1,000% sure, but I'm 95% sure that they are fully confident it is the same weapon. In addition, by the way, to the manifesto, they also found like a spiral notebook. The guy was spiraling out of control, but they found a spiral notebook on him. But the big news today, speaking of evidence, which is your world, Josh Ritter, in prosecuting a case, police did publicly confirm that his fingerprints match a water bottle and a protein, the Kind bar that he was eating. The fingerprints do match. So that is a huge piece of evidence.
Which are items that were recovered near the scene of the murder, correct?
By the way, the gun found on him, and I apologize because I'm a little delirious right now, but the gun found on him matched the shell casings found at the scene.
Oh, okay.
So,
and would explain too, because there was a lot of people speculating as to what type of a weapon it was, because you saw that he had to like rechamber around manually every time after he fired. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, that indicates that he's using kind of this different type of bullet ammunition that may have caused the gun to misfire. That may explain that he's experienced with weapons because he knows how to unjam a weapon. But now it looks like if it was a 3D printed weapon, it may have been that's the way it operated, that this isn't the normally kind of rechambering sort of semi-automatic, that he had to actually manually chamber a bullet every time.
That's a great point. I don't know enough about firearms, to be honest, but I did have some profilers and real experienced FBI agents on who said that it looks like his stance, like the way he shoots, may have been learned from a video game.
Oh, interesting.
Rob D'Amico, who's a firearms specialist, who's part of the hostage rescue team at the FBI, where they're trained. They shoot over 100,000 rounds a year. He said he bets that he learned how to shoot on a video game, and he said that they are so realistic now that it's literally like as good as being at a firing range. There was other interesting news in this notebook, Josh. They found too that he was contemplating using a bomb and not a gun, but he decided in his own writing that a bomb could, quote unquote, kill innocents. So he had, some sense of humanity despite what he did. Also, if you remember, during the shooting, there was a woman you could see who he had a line of fire on, and he obviously decided not to shoot her. But let me ask you this: with a fingerprint match and a ballistics match, is it game over? I mean, how do you defend that?
I don't know how you even short of those things, the amount of kind of circumstantial evidence that continues to mount against this guy, I don't know how you defend it. I know that his attorney has made this statement that I've seen nothing that is linking my client to this murder. Well, hold tight, buddy. They're making copies as you speak, and don't worry. I'm sure there's a flood of evidence that will be handed to you shortly that will link your client to this murder.
Yeah, by the way, Josh, real quick, I don't want to cut you off, but it's your show, but it's my that horrible habit. So Tim Jansen, who's a really well-respected criminal defense attorney, said was one of the craziest things he's ever heard a defense attorney say. And by the way, he's not a public defender. This guy's name is I forget the first name, Dickey. Why am I blanking on the first name? Dickey's the last. Tom Dickey? I think it is Tom Dickey. He is the attorney in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And at this little impromptu press conference yesterday, he did say there is no evidence linking my client. He's found with the ID used to get into the hospital, the same name, 3 other fake IDs, a manifesto, a weapon, a suppressor. Tim Jansen said this guy should have never said this, that he should have just come out and said, my client is innocent. We'll prove it in court. He vehemently denies the allegations. How big of a problem is it that this lawyer said this?
I don't think it's a big problem as far as like the case and moving forward. I think it just demonstrates he kind of is not all that media savvy. To me, it sounded like literally he got hired. He's seen nothing. Therefore, I've seen nothing that links my client. But then, you know, he walks into arraignment and they hand him all the evidence and like, oh, now I've seen evidence that links my client.
In fairness to him, some people are saying that's what he was implying, that he hasn't seen the evidence.
Correct. I personally have not witnessed it. I mean, this guy, what's strange about it too is that if the family is as wealthy as we're hearing, I don't know why they don't have some real Top Gun hotshot attorney. I don't know this guy, so I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but you would think that we would see a big name coming in to represent him here, because this is going to be, like you said, a career-making case for the reporters following it and the prosecutors and the defense attorney actually trying to handle it. A question I had is, has anyone talked about does anyone have a theory as to why he still had the gun on him? And this is where I'm going with this. He's ditched the backpack. He's tried to escape. He's now, moved through to another state. Apparently he was back and forth from east to west in Pennsylvania before they actually located him. And after all of that, he's still carrying around the gun. To me, and here's where I'm going, if you only intend to commit one murder, you ditch the gun along the way. If you're still carrying the gun with you, that might indicate you had other plans. Has anybody talked about that or speculated as blatantly as I have?
Yeah, well, it is. I think a lot of people have. Number one, what's interesting is he shot this guy in the back, and apparently the whole issue was related to his back being fused improperly. So that's one interesting thing. But we had 2 profilers on just now. One said that Dr. Debbie Goodman thought that he was keeping the gun almost as like a not a sexual pleasure, but like a tactile pleasure, like something that he could literally look at and be like, wow, I really did this. This is my weapon. And then we also had, and this guy's an absolute legend, retired special agent Greg McCrary, who entered the FBI in 1969, and he was also part of the profiling team. He's done everything. And he was saying, look, maybe he was going to commit another crime because he had the gun on him. But to your point, he had one backpack with him. He got rid of other stuff. Another interesting piece of information today that came out, a woman is walking her dog through Central Park, somewhere between 81st and 85th Street. And for those who do not know, Central Park runs from 57th all the way to 125th Street. But this woman in the bushes, in the brush, finds a bag. She opens it up, and there's shell casings inside. And the NYPD thinks that those are also related to the shooting.
I mean, also just throw out there, I imagine you can find a lot of shell casings in Central Park, but just putting that aside, interesting development.
I think they put it out there. I mean, there's literally a bag of them, but I was going to ask you, what do they do? I mean, they've got the gun at the crime lab in New York, and apparently it's pretty quick. You would know this better than I in terms of matching casings to the weapon. Is that something that they're already doing, do you think?
Oh, I'm sure they're working on it. The interesting thing about it is that if this is a 3D printed gun, is that going to make their job easier or harder? Because what they do essentially is they look for the markings that are left by the barreling inside of the gun. Those markings leave kind of fingerprints. Now, there's a lot of dispute as to how accurate all of this can be, but those leave distinctive markings on the expended bullets that they can match, or on the discharged casing. And they basically just try to recreate microscopically, or I guess, using some sort of enhancement of whether or not they can match that to this gun. When it's a manufactured gun, those are going to be very consistent. When it's somebody 3D printed it, I don't know how that changes everything. But long story short, yes, they're absolutely trying to match these things. Not to mention DNA and other stuff. I mean, every time you load bullets into a gun, you're going to have to come in contact with them. Now, is he wearing a glove that might prevent fingerprints, but it's their DNA still going to be found somewhere? I'm sure that the stuff that's been leaking out is just the dust of the evidence that they have against this guy. Not to mention, it looks like he's not all that much denying it.
By the way, I couldn't help but notice there was a comment in chat, has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but someone commending you on your clean, crisp set, and they must be looking at mine and just wondering what is happening. But I was happy to see your wife mention that you're getting a new set that I hope is as busy as mine.
Yeah.
But the reason I have this angle right now, typically we don't show any of this, but my camera is broken. So there you go. But
you're going for it looks like dorm room chic. I like it.
It's cool. It's just not set up right. I've got these hanging shades. But usually the typical shot is just a head-on shot. This was painted for me, and that is my dear mother right there, who I wrote a book about. But yeah, I'm curious to ask you. I don't even remember your question. I apologize. So feel free to ask it again. But he's fighting extradition. That's obviously just a legal wrangling issue there, because they're going to drag this guy's ass right back to New York City, right?
Correct. Extradition between states is like a carryover from, back when all the states didn't really get along all that well. And every state is its own sovereignty. And so, you would have situations, I'm talking, hundreds or so years ago, where somebody would flee from one state to an asylum state, and there might be some disagreement as to whether or not that person would be handed back over to the state where they committed the crime. We've since evolved greatly as a people and as a country, but there are still extradition laws on the books that there is a mechanism that has to take place. And if somebody wants to challenge that, then hearings need to take place. But when you've got two cooperating state governments, two cooperating governors, and no reason to not extradite this person, it's just doing nothing but wasting everyone's time. And I've heard some people say, well, strategically, that's buying him some time. I mean, yeah, but end of the day, that's not going to give him any kind of advantage. They could still extradite him immediately to New York, and he could, get more time to prepare for trial. So to me, it's just kind of a big nothing in the beginning. The question I had for you, though, is that now that this has happened, we have his manifesto, but, people are really starting to wonder, like, why? Because he is a young man who was the valedictorian of his high school. He did go to college. He is from a good, I'm putting that in quotes, but from a good family, well-to-do family, all of that kind of stuff. Why in the world would he do something this horrible? And people keep on talking about that he had this change in personality after this back injury and surgery. And I wonder if you know more about that or what has been developed on that.
Yeah, well, his middle school teacher was in the news today from Gilman, which is a very elite $40,000 a year private school where he was going. And she said she just couldn't believe it. She used the term cognitive dissonance, like she could not understand how this person who she taught, and she said she had concerns, it was an all-boys school, about some of the boys, but never him. And then you speak to a guy that was his landlord in Hawaii, and he said he was just like just totally dismayed, could not understand how this could be the same person. Friends at Penn said the same thing. So obviously something happened. I'm not a psychologist, but we have him on the show all the time. 26 is an age, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it's been talked about, where schizophrenia develops.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an age where a lot of men experience different sorts of severe mental illness at that age. I don't know why exactly, but that's something that's certainly going to be looked into. I know my dad was a psychiatrist. If he was here, he would just say, look, this guy made terrible choices. He wouldn't attribute it necessarily to a quote unquote mental illness. And I guess over time, the experts are going to kind of assess that. But one of the things that's interesting to me, Josh, is that, well, a bunch of things, but today in New York City, another piece of news is that all these wanted posters went up around New York City with pictures of health executives. So there's no shortage of empathy for this guy. And there's people in your chat right now, I just saw it, who believe that he will be acquitted, that he's innocent. And I just can't wrap my head around it, with all due respect to some of those people. By the way, murdering someone is never the answer, but the evidence here is staggering. But when you go on the cesspool that is X, which I'm frequently in, unfortunately, you hear people saying it's not the same photo. When you look at the photos that the NYPD released, it is not him. He's being framed. I mean, Josh, you're a rational guy. You're a prosecutor of the year, Los Angeles. What do you say to these people? I mean, they're serious in their beliefs. They really think this isn't the guy, but he gets caught with 4 IDs, a manifesto, a weapon. How can they be serious? I have a tough time squaring that.
I think the guy who is in custody is the right guy. If you know what we're hearing about, what was recovered on him, this manifesto, everything else we're learning about him. But I can understand that maybe perhaps some of the photos we were shown along the way may not have been this same individual. I'm not conspiracy guy, but I did look at some of those and I was just like, they don't look like the same person to me. They look like a guy wearing a jacket with a hood and a backpack, but I don't know if that's exactly the same person. But end of the day, it may cause trouble, and it may be one of those things that the defense will try to exploit later on if this heads to trial. But you know, as far as do they have the right guy, I think so. It's just I think the defense may say, well, you know, you were looking for this person, and that's, you know, I mean, this is kind of reminiscent of Delphi with they put together those composite sketches. You know, they were going to try to make much hay. They were prevented from doing so, but of the idea that you were looking for this person, well, that's not the person sitting here in court. But I think that's maybe be as far as it goes. I don't think there was another person involved, put it that way.
Well, there are photos from the day of the shooting at the Starbucks, and then from the hostel, I think a day or two before. And people on X have kind of circled this area because he's got very distinct eyebrows. Some call it a unibrow. And the photo from the Starbucks, you don't see that. And so it could be the lighting, could be that he knew he had very recognizable eyebrows and put clear tape. Who knows? But I'm with you. I mean, could there be a mistake in the photos? Yes. But is this the guy? More than likely. And obviously it's got to go through trial.
Joel, I promised you that we wouldn't keep you a whole bunch of time tonight because I know how busy you are, but let me just run a couple of these questions by you really quickly.
I'm good, Josh.
Linda says, surprised we haven't heard from Luigi's family or from the victim's family. Radio silence. The victim's family, I know, did make a statement, and I'm not as curious to hear from them. They can handle this and grieve however they like. But the defendant, Luigi's family, have we heard much from them? It is kind of bizarre to me because to this point of all of the photographs that were being put out of this person and partial face, you know, unmasked face, if you're related to that person, if that's your son, if that's your cousin, if that's your good friend, don't you immediately recognize that person? And were they all just keeping their mouths shut?
It's unclear right now. And this person is right. Brooklyn. Hey, Brooklyn Pasola. She's an STS too. They made a statement. So his cousin, who's Nino Mangione, is a state rep in Maryland, and through his office, he's in the state legislature. He put out a statement. I happen to have it right here, and he says, We only know what we have read in the media. This is from the day of the arrest. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson, the CEO, of course, and we ask people to pray for all involved. We are devastated by this news. And so they did put out a statement, but your question is a great question. And they've talked to, I know they spoke to a childhood friend of his who he had kind of a crazy explanation. His explanation was, there's so many Italians in New York, I would never have recognized them. He's like, I saw the photos, but I couldn't tell it was him, which is a really weird answer in my opinion. But there are other people who just said, I thought it could have been him. I know there was two guys at McDonald's, by the way. So what happened at McDonald's was it was an elderly customer who thought it was him. And then he called over a McDonald's employee, and that's how they got some of these photos. They started taking pictures. But there were two guys in the McDonald's before who were joking with each other, saying, hey, that looks just like the guy. And they left saying, wow, I hope that's not the guy. And it was the guy. So I think people, like, psychologically can see something and just not believe it. So I don't know if that is, I don't know if that's what's going on. I'd have to think, though, without like throwing or maligning the family, that some family members would have to know it was him. It's like, you have a brother, Josh, you would know if it was your brother.
Well, I've seen this too, where if you know someone well, you can see a blurry photo of them, or you can see a photo of them just, videotape of them just walking, and you don't see a face. And it's like, someone so well that you can recognize their behaviors and their smile and their eyebrows or whatever it is, because that's somebody you've known for their entire life. I just can't imagine that family and close to them didn't see that and immediately go, oh crap, that's Luigi. Or, oh, wait a minute, when's the last time anybody spoke to Luigi? And again, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but it is funny that we haven't heard much from them.
Yeah. By the way, the COE in the chat, my wife, said that she's not sure she would recognize him. I don't think my wife would recognize me. She walks around, I don't know. Took her 5 years to figure out that she thought I was cute, she said, which I took as a compliment, that it was only 5 years. But I don't know. Some people are more. I'm one of these guys, I'll never remember a name ever. Like, you can introduce yourself 1,000 times. It happened to me today, but I'll never forget a face. So I don't know. I guess it's left brain, right side of the brain kind of thing.
Lee T says, what are the PA gun charges? What are the Pennsylvania gun charges? And will NYC charge that also? I'll kind of jump on this one. Yeah. The gun charges are, I think there were, oh, well, here, someone else Taryn said he was 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the 2nd degree and 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon in the 3rd degree. Why do we have 2? Do we have 2 guns? I think the answer is no, we don't have 2 guns. I think they've charged this separate in different ways. Alternatively, I think they probably charged it as, a unlicensed firearm and a fabricated firearm and a silencer, which is also illegal. So there's all sorts of different ways you can charge these things. I think it's just still 1 weapon. But going back to Lee's question, they needed a reason to hold this man. Right. They needed something to put him in jail for, because they believed they had the New York murderer. Well, it's not a Pennsylvania case, so they can't charge him with murder. So they need to hold him for something. What's going to get really interesting here is, how in the world did they get the probable cause to search his backpack? Now, I understand they approached him. Cops, to get into the legal weeds here a little bit, cops are allowed to approach anybody on a hey, how you doing? Can I talk to you for a moment? You're allowed to have those types of contacts with people. Where you need to start having probable cause is for things like, can I search your backpack? Can I see where have you gone? Where are you coming from? And it sounds like he started acting more and more suspicious. Sounds like they asked him for ID. Again, what reason do they have to ask him for ID unless it was just consensual and he was allowing this to happen? He produces that ID. I don't know if the police officers immediately recognized that as the suspect ID that was used. I don't know if that was given to law enforcement. We know that he used a fake New Jersey ID, but were they given the name to look for? Perhaps they were. But then at some point, They felt that they had probable cause to either make an arrest or ask to search his backpack. And once they found those weapons, now they've got something to hold him for. And the whole point in holding him was you can arrest someone, hold them for 48 hours before you need to arraign them. And in that time, they're making frantic phone calls to New York. You need to charge this guy with murder so that we can hold him longer and extradite him to New York. So that's the gun charges. Maybe they'll follow him along, but they're really the only importance of them was to keep this guy locked up.
Yeah, which is exactly what they needed to do. By the way, there's so many wild things in this case, but one of them is the fake ID. The name was Mark Rosario, and people are saying if you take the first two letters, M.A., and the last two of the last name, I.O., the first three letters and the last two, it spells Mario, and then you've got Luigi. And so it's all out there. And I'm wondering how specific did this guy get in his planning. I also saw someone saying that he was dabbling, apparently in medications and drugs. Apparently he went on an ayahuasca trip, which is like psychedelics. Obviously that didn't work out too well for him, but, Josh, let me ask you a question. He's being held in a state prison. It looks like a haunted house, by the way. It was built in 1889. That's super out of the ordinary to hold someone on a gun charge in a state prison as opposed to jail. So what, in your opinion, is going on there?
Yeah, I was asked about this a couple of times. Why are they doing that? Is that worse? In my experience, the prison is actually a better place for inmates to be held from the inmate's perspective than the county jail. The county jail is kind of this bus station of awfulness where people are coming in, people are going out. It's sometimes incredibly violent people being housed next to people who are only there for, a trivial kind of crime, a misdemeanor. People awaiting their court dates and everything else. State prison is where people have been sentenced. They're on to serve their time. Everybody's kind of looking to keep their head down. Now, why are they holding him there? My only guess is that he is high profile and they know that he's going to get a lot of attention, and perhaps they feel that they need extra, security or, the ability to have him away from other prisoners so that nobody's going to try to take a pot shot at him. I don't know what it is. It is bizarre. And it does, just kind of as an aside, always bothers me in these high profile cases, how they start to treat everything differently. And it just usually ends up causing problems. Again, going back to Delphi, he was housed in a very different, isolation, in a different holding from all other prisoners. And that seemed to have caused a lot of problems in that case as well. So
yeah, he was in a prison also, right? Not a jail. Yeah,
correct.
Crazy.
And again, for reasons that were not really explained other than it was very high profile.
Yeah. The story is so nuts. I mean, the whole public perception of this is so divided. I mean, Amazon today, I don't know if you know this, had to take down, people were trying to sell merchandise that said free Luigi or deny, defend, depose, which I think are the three words that were used. So people are already, making money. We live in a capitalistic world, I guess, but people are selling this stuff and Amazon was having no part of it. So they were battling to take it down. It's so fascinating because it's like such a divisive case.
Yeah. Joel, you are a gem. I thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time. I know that your voice is probably exhausted. Give everybody some parting words. I'll let you have the last word on this before I let you go.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Number one, I love being on Courtroom Confidential. Number two, I want a shirt. I'll send you a shirt and a hat and STS one to reciprocate. My final thoughts.
By the way, not to interrupt you, but don't you owe me wearing a Dodgers jersey at some point here?
Someone brought that up, by the way. I do. The only problem is I don't own a Dodger jersey, but I will get one and I will put it on.
I feel like I need to cash in on that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just made me think of that.
I'm not buying the $120 jersey, but I will do that. And the Yankees, I heard, got Mike Trout today. So there you go.
So my God. Wow.
Yeah. So see, I don't know how good he is anymore, but we'll see. But that's neither here nor there. My final words on this are the following. Because I'm talking to Josh. Everyone is presumed innocent in this country until proven guilty in a court of law. This will likely go to a trial, but this guy, no matter what you think of the healthcare system, and I happen to think there's 1,000 problems, if not 100,000, not a million. And I've been through the same headaches, either trying to get a doctor to see me or trying to get medication at a CVS or a Walgreens and being told it doesn't cover. I mean, I've gotten on the phone and I've yelled at pharmaceutical companies. Oh, by the way, we have one more topic. So there's absolutely no excuse, no reason in the world to murder someone. This guy was so smart, went to Penn graduate school, has a master's, was working in tech. He could have created an app. He could have become a politician to enact legislation. 10 million things he could have done. The one thing he shouldn't have done is what he did. And now Brian Thompson's family, they're going to suffer the rest of their lives. The sons will never get over it. And the CEO says he did create an app, but not the right kind. And Luigi Mangione's family is never, ever going to get over this. And the ripple effect is going to go on. And every time there's a court date and every time there's an appeal, it's going to be a nightmare. And for the people out there who are in denial about this or think he's justified, as the great Steve Cohen says, you need a checkup from the neck up.
Well said, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate you doing this. And I'll talk to you soon.
What's your final topic? I got to ask.
We're going to talk a little bit about Jay-Z.
Oh boy, that's another one. All right. Thanks for having me. I love being on with Josh. Love Josh. Love Tiff, even though I've never met her in person. And anytime you want, and I'll bring you back on STS, Josh.
Love it. Thank you, brother. Take care. Have a good night.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything Joel just said, though. It is amazing how this case has this groundswell of people who seem to be cheerleading for the murderer. And I think that we do ourselves a favor by just kind of taking a breath and realizing that it's entirely different things. As much as you can be upset at the system, to kill one innocent man is never something that I think should be applauded. I'm going to get off my soapbox, though, because I don't want to spend our time doing that, but it is shocking to me, the response from folks. But Kaylin, do we have the results from our poll? I think we do. I think Jay-Z came in with a resounding 20-something point lead. And I hope you guys stick around. And I know that we're getting towards the end of our time that we usually spend together, but I had one really interesting thought, and I'll try to get to it quickly on this case. 62% for Jay-Z. Okay. I don't think I have to tell you guys much of what's going on with this, but Jay-Z was recently sued as a co-defendant with P. Diddy for a sexual assault of a 13-year-old girl that took place 20 years ago. Okay. And many people, biggest question I keep getting asked about this is, could this turn criminal? Is there any way that, because everybody highlights the idea that this is just a civil case, it's a lawsuit, is there any way that this could turn into something where Jay-Z might be in the same position that P. Diddy is in? And I thought long and hard about this. Usually the answer to something like that, when you're talking about a case 20 years ago, is going to be no. And for a couple of reasons. One, you've got questions about evidence. How do you produce evidence to corroborate somebody's claims of being sexually assaulted from 20 years ago? You've no longer got forensic evidence. You've no longer got DNA. It's highly unlikely that person ever went to be analyzed at a hospital after this all took place. I don't know. Maybe they did. It wasn't in the complaint. Maybe they did. But let's just assume that all that we have is the claims being made by this victim and no other physical evidence to back that up. So there's the one problem. The other problem is the criminal statute of limitations. A lot of people have pointed out this is 20 years ago. Can they even still criminally charge him at this point? Now, I will say this. I am not, nor am I going to try to act like I am some expert on the statute of limitations when it comes to New York. I've done some research. I've seen some other folks who've done research online, and I think it's tremendous research. Just to give you the cliff notes of that, the idea is that if this person was 13 at the time that this is allegedly took place, there was a statute in place that allowed for the tolling of the statute to run from 5 years since the point that the victim reaches 18. Doing the quick math, that brings us, if the victim reached the age of 18 in 2005, this took place in 2000, they were 13, you get to the age of 18, they would be, it brings us to 2005, and then you toll that for 5 years to 2010, okay? In 2006, in New York, there was a change in the law that allowed for no statute of limitations when it came to first degree R-word. In those cases, anything that took place after 2006 had no statute if it was, meaning the statute is limitless if it came to first degree assault. And therefore, there's an argument that can be made that that would retroactively, not really, but kind of allow for a first degree assault taking place in 2000 to still be open. Okay. Sorry. I hope you guys followed along with all of that. The real point is this. Let's say there is a way for the statute to remain open, and there is a way for him to be criminally charged. The only way that that could be done is in a situation of where it's first degree R-word. Okay. First degree in New York requires, there's 4 different ways that you can get there, but only 2 would potentially apply here. First, if it was their term that they use is forcible compulsion, meaning force was involved. And 2, if the victim was incapable of giving consent by reason of being physically helpless. In other words, somehow they were drugged, somehow they were restrained, somehow they were incapacitated beyond force, or in addition to or separate from force, allowing for this to become first degree. Okay. That's the long-winded way of winding us all up to, is there anything about this crime being alleged, and it is a crime, 13-year-old, flat out a crime, that could allow for this to be considered first degree? In my view, I think absolutely. And I'm going to point to all that we have right now is the allegations being made in the complaint. And so let's take a look at the complaint really quickly. Now, I am going to warn you guys, it is a little bit graphic, and I'm going to try to watch the way that I present it as far as the way that I describe it. But if you're reading this too, just be warned that it does use some graphic language here. Okay, so first it describes how this 13-year-old girl happened to come back to a party, an after party being hosted by Sean Combs. She describes how she was wandering about the party. She saw all sorts of celebrities, and then she drank something that made her feel woozy and lightheaded. She found a room. It was an empty room. Soon after, Combs entered the room along with defendant Carter. Sean Carter is Jay-Z, and a female celebrity, quote unquote, celebrity B. Plaintiff immediately recognized all 3 celebrities. Keep that in mind. Combs, P. Diddy, aggressively approached plaintiff with a crazed look in his eyes, grabbed her and said, "You are ready to party." Combs then threw plaintiff, this 13-year-old, toward a wall, causing plaintiff to fall. Plaintiff got up and stumbled, at which point Combs grabbed her again and threw her on the bed. At that point, Carter, being Jay-Z, began removing plaintiff's, the 13-year-old's, clothes, and she grew more disoriented. Then this is where it gets graphic, and I'm not going to read this for you, but you can read it yourself. what she describes is then being assaulted. She describes then being what, in my view, is first-degree assault. I don't care how you cut this. I was a prosecutor. I handled cases like this. If a 13-year-old describes for me this, if a 13-year-old came into my office and described that, being thrown to a wall, grabbed again and thrown on the bed, then someone removing her clothes while someone else holds her down, that's first degree any way you cut it. That, if this is what they have, just saying that is the crime, in my view, that crime can survive the statute as I understand it. But that's not the entire problem here, and that's not the end of the entire question. The entire problem here then becomes, how do they prove it? You've got these allegations, you've got a plaintiff, you've got that person can say, this happened and that happened. We're talking about a memory that's 20 years old. We're talking about no forensic evidence, likely, no examination kit done of this person, likely. So what are you left with? Well, we've heard a lot of talk about perhaps videotapes. I know that a lot of photographs and videotapes have come out. Maybe that's it. We've heard a lot of talk about, maybe statements that have been made by people involved later on down the line. Are those corroborating people? But then I thought about this. Celebrity B. Think about that for a moment. Who is that? Plaintiff knows who that is. Plaintiff says she immediately recognized this person. This person is a person close to P. Diddy and Jay-Z, if everything in here is to be believed. And this person has been unnamed on purpose by the plaintiff. To me, in my view, the best way this case gets proven is if law enforcement speaks to Celebrity B, whoever that is. I know you guys have got a lot of guesses as to who that is. I can see you all guessing in the comments, but law enforcement, if they expect to actually take this seriously, I think they're having conversations with Celebrity B. And according to what's being alleged here, Celebrity B could be implicated criminally in all of this that took place. Celebrity B, though, has managed to not be named in this lawsuit. And I imagine there might be some reason for Celebrity B to want to cooperate and keep their name out of this lawsuit. And if that means taking down other far more powerful people, and they avoid being named in a lawsuit, and they avoid all the reputational harm, and they avoid any kind of criminal liability, that to me might be the easiest, not easiest. Certainly none of this is going to be easy, but that might be the strongest way to corroborate the allegations being made by this 13-year-old plaintiff that could actually be a criminal case that you would see in court. Would they file this? If you have a 13-year-old who can describe, or who's now an adult, but can describe in specific enough terms what took place, and I'm talking about more than just it was a U-shaped driveway and it was a White House, but can give them some more details that they might be able to corroborate, given the time, knowing the date, knowing where people were, being able to place defendants there at the same time, corroborating all of that. And then you've got an eyewitness who's going to say, I saw this took place. Sure, that's absolutely something you could file. And I don't think law enforcement is afraid of doing it anymore, because they've already taken down P. Diddy. I don't think they're afraid of these celebrities anymore. And in fact, I think some of them are looking for feathers in their caps when it comes to these types of things. So I don't know. I'll take some questions on this before I let everybody go. But to me, that as I was reading this and I was trying to assess it and really, really not just, stir us all up and get us all ginned up, but really think about, does this have a chance? I don't think it'd be wise for Jay-Z's team to believe this will never end up in a criminal court. Look at P. Diddy if you want a better reason than anything else. Lisa H4 says, do you think there will be more reports on him from others? I think the floodgates are open. I don't think anybody's afraid of these celebrities anymore. I think that these incredibly powerful and rich people at one point had everyone afraid and everyone worried about, their reputation and the people with power and money coming after them. I don't think anybody is afraid anymore at all. And I think that not only will you start seeing more reports and people coming forward, I think you're going to start seeing more criminal charges because that grand jury was convened still. They're still taking testimony. And this is currently the U.S. versus P. Diddy, but he is described in there as having an entire framework of people around him, an entire I'm blanking on the term I'm looking for, but he was not acting alone. Those other people are going to get on one of two pathways. They're either going to cooperate with the prosecution or they're going to end up on the other side of that US versus. And that's not where they want to end up. DK says, will this person be able to remain anonymous for trial? If it remains a civil case and the plaintiffs decide to never name that person or call that person as a witness, sure. If police approach that person and get that person to cooperate and bring criminal charges based upon these allegations, we will eventually find out who that was. We may not find out immediately because witnesses are oftentimes protected and that's not something that's made public. But we may find out soon enough who that is. It's just, to me, that was more than just adding color to the story. Naming letting us know this is a well-known celebrity and that person witnessed this, I think was a absolute shot over the bow warning to Jay-Z and a signal to law enforcement that there might be something here. All right, let's take, do we got one more, Kaylin, before we say goodnight? Kaylin's giving me the, I don't know, look. That's all right. I'm tired. You guys are all tired. You guys have all been fabulous. Thank you so much. Well, we'll go out on this. Blackwater, thank you so much for gifting those memberships. You are fabulous. This whole entire community has been fabulous. This was a wonderful Wednesday Night Live. Thank you so much. I know we had a huge group join us tonight. A lot of those are STS folks, so welcome everybody. Please subscribe if you're enjoying what you heard tonight. But stay tuned for this Friday. We have our normal Friday episode. We have, and our announcement. We have a new announcement for our latest in our Courtroom Confidential conversation series. If you missed it, on Monday, Andrea Burkhart came on. We interviewed her. It was fabulous. Everybody enjoyed it. This coming Monday, premiering on the 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, we sat down and did an interview with Joseph Scott Morgan from the podcast Body Bags. You guys probably know Joseph Scott. I got to tell you, this was a phenomenal conversation that we had. I had chills on my arms. I think at one point we were both perhaps close to tears because it was incredible stuff that he had to share with us. The guy's amazing. He's led an amazing life. He shares with us some very personal and wonderful stories. I think you guys will really enjoy that. So stay tuned. We're going to do a live premiere on Monday so everybody can join with us in the chat as we talk about it. And I poked Joseph and told him, please join us in the chat as well, even though YouTube isn't entirely his thing. But final thank you to the rest of the members who joined up: Tata T, Catherine Hendricks, Lacey Lace, Michelle Celeste, Crash D, Gina Gilmore, Robert Scown, Margie561, and DK, who we heard from a couple of times tonight. You guys have all been fabulous. Thank you for sticking with me a few more minutes. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Joel. Please send him a shout out and tell him how much you appreciate it as well. In the meantime, you guys are wonderful. I will see you again next week. Have a wonderful evening, and everybody take care.